I want to welcome everyone. I'm Marilyn Petito Deviani, and I'm going to be presiding today. And I welcome all of you. And I'm first going to read the letter from the governor. Dear councilors, I am pleased to nominate Zachary M. Hillman to the position of Associate Justice of the District Court. I submit this nomination for the advice and consent of the Executive Council pursuant to Part 2, Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And I am closing the nominee's resume for your convenience. Sincerely, Charles Baker. So I welcome you, Attorney Hillman. And before I start with this hearing, I'm going to ask if there's anyone who plans to speak to stand and the nominee to stand to be sworn in. Okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. So, first of all, would you like to introduce these people who have come and taken from their schedule to be here to support you?
Certainly, thank you. With me today is Chief Justice Paul Dalley, Attorney Saxon, a former colleague of mine from the Nominee's office, Attorney Aviva Jerusham, Joe Jackson from the District Court, my wife Sarah, my mother Kay, Judge Sarah Ellis from the District Court, Justice Joseph Ditkoff from the Appeals Court, and Justice Gaziano from the Supreme Judicial Court.
Okay. Well, for me, I have to tell you, it's such an honor to have, especially your guests, but for the judges who came today, it's such an honor for me because I was honored to vote for you and twice for Judge Gaziano. So I'm going to call on your witnesses, and I will first call on Judge Gaziano. If you could take a seat over here beside the nominee.
We should stand.
Wow.
Thank you very much. It's really my privilege to appear in front of the Governor's Council in support of Zach Hillman's nomination. He appeared before me a number of times in Superior Court and on the SJC, and I'm also familiar with his work in the District Court Administrative Office. I think without fail, and you've had lots of great candidates in front of you, his legal abilities are off the charts. But that's really, there are a lot of smart lawyers, and you've seen them all. And he's rated among them, but that's not really what I really want to focus on because that speaks for itself. I think the other traits are equally important and perhaps more important. The first trait I want to talk about is his integrity. And I define that by a willingness to do right in the face of unpopular decisions, things that, whatever the result, that might result in public disapproval. Zach Hillman worked on the Farrak working group, which I was in charge of for the SJC, that led to the dismissal of thousands of cases that were tainted by drug lab misconduct. He worked tirelessly on that project. But what I want to focus on more than that was an appellate case that happened in the shadows that nobody would have known about. Some people define integrity as doing the right thing when no one would watch it, and this is a perfect example. And this wasn't something I came across. This was something that was raised by a beloved Chief Justice Gans. And Zach appeared from the SJC. There was an error made in the trial, error that was unnoticed by very experienced defense counsel. And on his own, even though it hurt his case, he brought that to the attention of the SJC. And he, of course, as an advocate, argued why it was non-prejudicial, why he should still win. But perhaps the SJC would have missed it because experienced defense counsel did, but he didn't, and he raised it to the court. Chief Justice Gans noted that as an example of an assistant district attorney, a lawyer doing the right thing. So I think that speaks volumes to his integrity. Second, I want to highlight his common sense and his ability as a problem solver. And as you all know from being practicing lawyers or people who have been involved in the system for a long time, the district court is really where problems get solved. I was speaking to Steve Cronin, who was a clerk of the single justice session. He heard that Zach had been nominated. He said, "That's terrific." I said, "Why is that terrific, Steve?" And he said, "Because whenever we have a problem in the single justice office, people come in, they complain about transcripts, all sorts of issues. We call up Zach and he solves those problems. Nobody knows anything about it. He just gets things done. It doesn't take a second phone call. He just has that great common sense problem solving ability that's innate." And lastly, I want to highlight humility. And I think as you can see from Zach, when you get to know him and you've all spoken to him, met him, confidence is great in a judge, but sometimes we're confident to a fault. We don't want to admit we're wrong. We want to be decisive and make a decision because we don't want people to think we know what we're doing, because that's our stock in trade, right? But as you reflect on it, humility is more important than confidence, because humility means that you understand that people make mistakes, understand that you can make a mistake. It takes a great deal of courage to admit that you were wrong, to look for answers, and try to find solutions rather than just being the judge who's being decisive. I think that's a trait that is sometimes overlooked, but is very important in a trial judge. So given all those traits, I'm very confident that he's going to be a fabulous district court judge. I would welcome any questions that you have.
Are you aware of how many,
Excuse me, do you want to speak? Okay,
are you aware of how many district court cases he actually was involved in as a prosecutor, where he tried a case in district court or did a motion to suppress in district court?
I'm not aware of that. My experience with him was in Superior Court.
Thank you.
any other councilors have any questions?
See you, Judge.
I see it corrected. Is this the first time you have come in to speak for someone?
Second time, Councilman.
Second time. Well, I welcome you. And again, it was my honor to vote for you twice, and so deserving to be on our highest court. Thank you for all your service. And I'll tell you, this is a wonderful tribute to this nominee for you to come and speak for him. Thank you. And I also want to thank Justice Gaziano for taking from your time to to come here and to support the nominee. I appreciate that. So our next, first of all, now that we have another counselor here, I'd like to introduce the counselors. Counselor Iannella, Counselor Duff, Counselor Kennedy, Counselor Hurley,
Good afternoon.
Counselor Ferrara, and Counselor Jubinville. Okay, so your next nominee is, now I hope I pronounce this right, Aviva Derechan. How'd I do? Okay, better welcome, sit down.
Thank you so much for being in your esteemed presence. I will say this is the first time I've been here, and if there is anybody that I will come here for,
Excuse me, you can take off your mask. We're all vaccinated here, I was gonna know. So if you people want to take off your mask, we're safe in here, okay?
thank you. If there's anybody that I would come here for, it would be Zach Hillman. I have to honestly say that that Justice Gaziano really stole my thunder and said virtually everything that I wanted to say about Zach Hillman. I take a different perspective, though, because I think I'm the only defense attorney here. So I can tell you that as a practical matter, defense attorneys, although we're by and large pleased with the nominations who go onto the bench, we always have a sigh whenever we see another prosecutor nominated to the bench instead of the defense counsel. But I would say that when I saw Zach was nominated, I was beyond delighted. And I'm going to tell you why. When I look at a prosecutor, and I deal with many, and I have dealt with many in all different agencies, state, federal, we look for somebody that we believe is really going to honor justice. And that always doesn't happen in the moment. Prosecutors, even defense attorneys, can become very territorial, can look at the shiny object at the end of the day. But that's not Zach. Zach is, I feel it in my heart that Zach is going to do the right thing. For all the reasons that I will not repeat, that Justice Gaziano said so eloquently, he is going to be all those people. He's going to bring integrity. He's going to bring fairness. He's going to bring humility. And I also think he's going to bring perspective, because he has perspective from being on the floor, arguing before judges, understanding and listening to what it is that justices or judges are looking for, and then being honestly responsive to that. And so as an attorney, a defense attorney, if I ever have the pleasure to appear before Zach Hillman, I know, even if he doesn't rule in my favor, that he'll be deliberative, contemplative, fair, and he will do the right and the just thing. And I'll answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Counsel Kennedy?
Not a question. It's great to see you. I haven't seen you in a long time. And
Likewise.
used to do a lot of cases
Yes.
together. You always do a great job.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Counsel,
Yes, you're a defense attorney. Where is your practice?
My practice, I have an office in Boston with
Oh,
my.
no, what courts?
I practice, well, it'd probably be easier to say where I don't practice, but I would think that I've been pretty much in every jurisdiction, most district courts, most superior courts, federal court. I think I've only not tried a case on the Cape and Islands, pretty much.
Well, you should go there. It's a very,
I wish I could.
where did you get to know Attorney Hillman?
Thank you. I was hoping you would ask. Attorney Hillman and I met initially because he second seated a very, very challenging murder case. And off in the first seat, John Pappas, who is an excellent prosecutor, was unavailable. And so Zach stood in on status conferences and the like. And we talked a lot. And I was really struck by how thoughtful he was. We spoke about the case. He didn't take a very combative stance with me, which really struck me very favorably at the time, because I knew that this was one of his first trials that he was participating in on the trial level and not the post-conviction or appeals unit. And rather taking a defensive stance as if I know what I'm doing and I don't have to prove myself. He really wanted to learn. He really wanted to get to know the practice, the ins and outs, really, frankly, in a very remarkable way. I was so impressed by that. And then a couple of years later, I was pleasantly surprised to learn that he had taken over a case as first seat on a case that was unusual in factual pattern, but also had very severe sentencing ramifications if convicted on habitual offender and ACC, all the like. And we were trying the case, and first of all, he was grace under pressure. It was his first trial, I think. And frankly, a first trial, a superior court trial, and a serious one at that. And not only was he just so appropriate and fair and honest, but the judge who was trying the case was training another judge trying the case, and I can't imagine any more pressure from somebody for the first time being on trial. His closing argument was flawless. His cross-examination, his direct examination was perfect. I couldn't believe that was his first trial when I learned that it was. So I was very.
Did you ever have any cases with him in district court?
No, I did not.
Thank you.
I apologize if I didn't realize that the question was directed only to district court.
No, I wanted to let you go, so,
Yeah.
thank you.
is there one case that comes to mind that he counseled you that you were so impressed with?
Those were we would see each other all the time, and he had other cases when he was sitting typically in the first session in Suffolk Superior Court, which is where I generally saw him, and we would talk about his other cases. And we would share what you call war stories, if you will. But he approached his other cases with the same calm demeanor and the same respect that these cases should be accorded. And so even standing apart, the two cases I described, which I had intimate familiarity with, I was very impressed consistently with the way he approached his cases.
So how many years have you known the nominee?
2005, perhaps? Does 2000 maybe? So I
6
think,
years?
yeah, no, 2000 longer. I think
That's okay.
probably, trying to think of the murder case that we tried together. Maybe 2008 or 9. I'm not sure, but we've known each other a long time.
Thank you for your testimony. It means a lot. Thank you.
so much. I appreciate it.
And I want to apologize to Justice Dalley. I was having you right up in the front. So would you take a seat, please?
Thank you, Councilor Devaney.
Welcome.
Thank you. And thank you to the members of the Governor's Council. It's my privilege to testify on behalf of Attorney Zach Hillman's nomination. For over the past 4 years, I've worked with him very closely, literally on a daily basis in his role as general counsel to the district court. I respectfully submit that he is highly qualified to serve in the district court, and these are the reasons. He has substantial legal experience and legal skills. He has a tremendous work ethic. He has sound judgment with, as Justice Gaziano mentioned, a real sense of humility and concern for others. He has excellent temperament, and he has the highest level of integrity. And I've been privileged to witness this day after day for the last 4.5 years. Throughout his career as a prosecutor and as general counsel, he earned the respect of lawyers, court personnel, and judges throughout the court system for his competency, his integrity, and his professionalism. And I think counsel perhaps best summed it up when she talked about his perspective. One of the questions, and I've had the privilege to talk to Zach during the course of his application period, one of the things that strikes me is his perspective. So he may not have spent a tremendous amount of time in the district court, but he spent tremendous time doing appellate work and doing superior court work, and I think that brings great perspective to how he would handle district court cases. In his responsibility as general counsel, his duties were comprehensive and wide-ranging. Rely on his advice in the district court on virtually every single significant legal and policy decision. He provides counsel and guidance to judges and clerk magistrates on a daily basis, literally in the middle of hearings, in the middle of trials. He provides them with direct guidance. He's drafted and developed all district court procedures. One thing that I wanted to raise is during the pandemic, we were forced almost on a monthly basis responding to the situation to issue standing orders that governed the operation of the court system. And we issued over a dozen of those standing orders that spoke to how courts conducted procedures and court operations. Zach was the point person in drafting those orders. He worked with me day after day in developing this information, and what he was able to do was listen to a lot of different people, determine some type of consensus, and give me tremendous advice in terms of drafting these procedures. In every instance, he's thoughtful and he's substantive. His position requires a lot of dealing with a lot of sensitive matters in implementing court policies. And in every respect, he's shown significant judgment and discretion, and he's done this intelligently and thoughtfully. He serves on a number of district courts as the providing legal counsel to the criminal committee, the civil committee, and the committee on race and ethnic fairness. And he often serves, I just want to emphasize, he often serves as a point of reference for judges and lawyers throughout the system seeking substantive procedural and practical legal advice. Most importantly, and I'd echo what Justice Gaziano said, you can be the smartest person in the room and not necessarily the most effective judge. But I just want to take a moment to tell you the type of person he is. He's thoughtful, he's kind, he's decent, and he's considerate. I have never seen him exercise anything but those attributes on a day-to-day basis for almost 5 years now. His entire career has been defined by sound reason and judgment, by balance and fairness, and I suggest to you, if you confirm his nomination, he'll bring those attributes to the community courts that we serve. For all of these reasons, I submit that his professional and personal attributes make him an exceptional nominee. I support his nomination. I respectfully ask you to support his nomination, and I thank you for the opportunity to appear today before you.
Thank you very much. Counselor Jubenville.
I'm having a problem because I've gotten so many calls that clerks and judges continually call him daily to solve problems in the court system. So if he's gone out of that role, judges and clerks aren't going to know what the hell to do in this Commonwealth.
You know, the truth is, it's a substantial challenge for me. I see Justice Didkoff here. I see Justice Sarah Ellis here, and Zach Hillman. We've got great legal staff, but it's a significant loss to the district court, but it's also would be a great gain for the people of the Commonwealth if he were serving as a judge.
I think those judges aren't going to know what to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
See you, Judge.
I just want to ask you, what do you think is the greatest strength that the nominee brings to the bench?
Is how he treats other people. It's more, so professionally, he's just top notch in every way, but personally, he's even more impressive. How he treats people, how he listens to people, how he cares about people and cares about the world we live in. That's what makes him exceptional.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Our next nominee is, and excuse me for mispronouncing, El Sashe. Please tell me how you pronounce your name. I'm so sorry.
No worries. It's my name is Helle Saxon.
Okay. Sachsc, and you pronounce it?
Saxon.
Okay. You're welcome.
Good afternoon, members of the Governor's Council. My name is Helle Saxon, and I'm currently an Assistant Attorney General in the Criminal Bureau at the Massachusetts Attorney General's Office. It is my great pleasure to speak to you this afternoon in support of Zachary Hillman's nomination as an Associate Justice of the District Court. I have known Zach since 2008 when he joined the appeals unit at the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office. We quickly became friends, and our friendship has continued after he left the DA's office to join the Administrative Office of the District Court in 2017. The interests that connected us right from the beginning are our shared love for art, for family, and for the outdoors. To those of you who may not know, Zach is an avid photographer and would probably have turned that into a successful career had he not decided to become a lawyer. Through his lens, he is able to capture the essence and the beauty of the places and people he photographs, even if to a casual observer, they may appear simply to be an ordinary street scene. For many years, I had been telling Zach how much my family and I loved hiking in Acadia National Park in Maine. When Zach and his wife, Sarah, decided to go, they unfortunately encountered very damp and foggy weather. That did not deter them from scaling up the mountains, and Zach brought back a photograph taken on the famous Beehive hike that showed a foggy landscape with only the faintest outline of a lakeshore. It is not your typical view of the Acadia landscape of green mountains and blue ocean, but it captures the essence of its beauty and is one of my prized possessions. You may wonder why I am talking to you about Zach's gift as a photographer. I am doing so because his ability to hone in on the essential aspects of a situation and to capture what many may not see translates into a deep humanity and Zach's ability to understand the motivations and needs of those around him. You will not find a kinder person than Zach. He is there for his family, his friends, and everyone around him. On the weekends, you may find him manning a stand at the local farmer's market, helping out his brother who has a greenhouse and gardening business. At work, I always knew that in Zach, I had a colleague to whom I could turn with any question or request for help. And in court, no matter the case or its outcome, you would never find anyone, be it a court officer, an attorney, a clerk, a judge, who would not be glad Zach was handling a case. His humanity and ability to capture the essence of a situation and understand the needs of those around him would go a long way in the district court that, no matter to which side one looks, serves people in a state of crisis. I want to close with my own experience of how Zach treats people in a crisis. Last year, during the height of the COVID pandemic, my husband was diagnosed with a recurrence of a very aggressive tumor for which he had been treated a few years ago and was to undergo intensive treatment at Dana-Farber. When Zach found out about it, he immediately sprung into action. He must have spent an entire weekend cooking for us, then drove all the way from Acton to Brookline and stocked our freezer with home-cooked meals. This was a true sign of his deep humanity and character, and I wholeheartedly support Zach Hillman's nomination as an Associate Justice of the District Court. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any councils have any questions? Councilor Hurley.
So you knew him from the Superior Court Appellate Division?
From the appeals unit at the Suffolk DA's office.
Okay, so the appeals unit would handle any appeals, whether it's a Superior Court or District Court?
That is correct. In addition, we also handle motions in the district and superior courts.
Motions for?
For new trial, also on occasion, motions to suppress.
So how much time would you say Zach spent in District Court appellate work?
I would say more than 50% of his appellate practice would have had to be district court because that's where the vast majority of cases are generated.
And did that include anything on sentencing?
Always, yes.
How?
Sentence appeals were also handled by our office. It often comes up in briefing or motions to revise and revoke a sentence, which would also be handled by the appeals unit.
So how much of his practice there would have been in sentencing?
Well, that is difficult to put a number on. I think we handled major appeals on sentencing issues in the appeals unit, and I cannot tell you which of those cases were Zach's in particular, but the way the team worked was that cases of that nature that would go to oral argument would always be handled by, or mooted at least, by a team of lawyers, and there would be team discussions on how to proceed with an issue, especially if a major rule interpretation or advocacy for a rule change was at issue. And so Zach was always a critical member of that team and would have been involved in those decisions.
Thank you.
Councilor Iannello.
Very compelling testimony.
Thank you.
What about Germany?
I am from a city called Bielefeld, which is near Hanover in the northern part of Germany.
The only reason I ask, my son works for, he's a lawyer. He's living in Germany since his third year. He works for Fragment, and he lives in Frankfurt. 6 months ago, really beautiful. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you for coming. It's very important for me to see witnesses who really know a nominee. I've seen people sitting in your chair and I've said, how long have you known him? Oh, once in court. That doesn't make it, but you tell me about what personal attributes come forward to you when you see him, when you're working with him.
He's someone I would always and completely trust with any issue I have, whether it's personal or professional. I would never hesitate to ask Zach a question, even if I thought that maybe my question wasn't particularly thoughtful, or if I really had a serious problem. Zach is someone I would completely trust to help me, to advise me, and trustworthy, I suppose is the word.
Well, you certainly chose the right witnesses, and I appreciate your testimony. Thank you very much. Now, is there anyone here that's not on the witness list who would like to speak in support of the nominee? Please come forward. Judge Zitkoff, you'd like to say a few words? Whoever would like to speak, you're welcome. So is there anyone in opposition? Hearing none. Now it's your turn for your presentation.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I'd like to begin by thanking this council for this opportunity. Special thanks to Councilor Petito Devaney for hosting me. I would like to thank Governor Baker, Lieutenant Governor Polito for the honor of this nomination. I would also like to express my gratitude to the JNC and the Joint Bar, Bob Ross, Lauren Green Petrino, and Emily Gauthier, and Justice Gaziano, Chief Justice Dalley, Attorney Derechan, and Attorney Saxon for speaking on my behalf. I would not be sitting in this chair today were it not for all the support, opportunity, and mentorship that I've been blessed with throughout my career. I would like to thank District Attorney Dan Conley for the opportunity he provided to me and the support that he has shown me throughout the years, as well as all of that from my colleagues from the District Attorney's Office. Thank you, Chief Dalley, for the opportunity to work with the court and for your trust, encouragement, and mentorship. I'd like to thank all of my colleagues in the court for their collegiality and all the hard work that they do. And I would like to thank all of the judges, clerks, and court staff before whom I've appeared through the years, and all of my colleagues of the bar. It is a privilege and an honor to practice law in Massachusetts because of the professionalism and collegiality of the bench and the bar. Nor would I be sitting here today without the encouragement and support of my family. My parents raised me and my siblings in Fitchburg, Massachusetts. My siblings and I are all proud graduates of Fitchburg Public Schools. My wife is too. And my parents and siblings still live there. My mother is a retired public high school teacher. My father, after running a small private law practice, has served as a judge in different capacities for over 30 years. They encouraged each of their own kids to pursue their own path and supported us unconditionally as we figured out what that meant. Leading by example, they also made sure that they instilled in us values of hard work, empathy, humility, and compassion. My sister is just entering her second career as a nurse. She just passed her boards a couple of weeks ago. And my brother is a small business owner running a nursery in Green. They and their spouses are terrific parents and inspire me with their combination of hard work and humor. I would also like to thank my parents-in-law, my brothers and sisters-in-law, and my nieces and nephews. I'm blessed to have them in my life. And I truly would not be here were it not for the love and support of my wife, Sarah. I am in awe of her talent as a designer and an artist, and she inspires me by who she is. She's my partner and the best thing that's ever happened to me. My path to the district court started after college with an internship at the JFK Library in Boston, where I learned of President Kennedy's calls for public service. His message drove me to apply to law school and to pursue a career in public service. After law school, I worked for almost 9 years as an assistant district attorney in Suffolk County. There, I was assigned to the appeals unit where I handled appeals ranging from district court practice to first-degree murder. I also jumped at the opportunities to answer on cases in the BMC and to take and work cases up in the BMC and Superior Court and to second-seat veteran attorneys in trials. Not only did my time as an ADA give me a well-rounded professional experience, it instilled in me incredible respect for the day-to-day work that is done by the courts. The last 4 years, I've worked as general counsel to the district court. In this role, my colleagues and I draft court policy and orders, keep judges and clerks up to date on legal developments. We are part of committees that draft jury instructions and forms that are used by the bench, clerks, attorneys, and parties. We develop judicial education programs and resources. My favorite part of the job is being a resource and sounding board for judges and clerks. Almost daily, judges and clerks call me and my colleagues with questions that range from bail to Section 35 hearings, from legal technicalities to practical realities, daily practice to, here's a new one that I haven't seen in my 15 years on the bench. Judges and clerks depend on us to provide them with quick and accurate guidance and advice, and I like to think that we are the resource that they can depend on to do their job. This role has also given me unique insight into the decisions that judges have to make and requires me to give advice and guidance from the perspective of a district court judge. This combination of professional experience has given me deep appreciation for the role that the district court plays in the community. All members of the community from the Berkshires to the Cape should expect that if they have a matter that brings them before the district court, it will be handled fairly, justly, and with dignity. My experience has shown me how hard our court employees work to make this expectation a reality. In working with district court judges over the last 4 years, I've seen how seriously they take their role in the system. It's not an easy job, and their passion and dedication has inspired me to apply for this position. I'm humbled that I sit before you. I know that there's much to learn, and if I am fortunate enough to be confirmed, I will dedicate myself to doing the very best job that I can for the court and the community. It would be the highest honor to serve my community in the capacity as a district court judge. Welcome any questions that you may have.
Before I go any further, I'm going to respectfully ask the councilors to put their cell phones in their desks in respect to the nominee and the importance of this hearing. Does anyone have any questions? Councilor Ferrara.
Thank you. I read your resume. I spoke to you. I appreciate your time that you offered. At lunch, I ran into Justice Serge Georges, and we talked about you. And one of the concerns is that you haven't spent a lot of time in the district court courtroom. And he said, Joe, there are people that haven't been in the district court, and there are people that haven't been in the district court. And I think that says a lot. You have done an incredible amount of public service to the Commonwealth as an ADA, and now as general counsel to the chief in the district court, and I respect that. So although you weren't particularly in individual district court rooms, you apparently ran a lot of the courtrooms from your Boston office and told people what to do, and always the right thing. So I want to thank you for your service. When I was the police chief, I always promoted the people that served me well in the past, served the town well in the past, because I think past history is a good predictor of the future. And with your track record, I think you're going to be a great judge. So thank you for applying. One other favor. And I do think you're going to get through, you have to encourage the chief to apply to be the chief of the trial court. Deal?
Deal.
Okay, thank you. I don't want to put him on the spot, but I can ask you.
So Iannelli, you have a question?
Yes, no questions, but what a nice resume. You have an outstanding resume. And I've been here a few years. The witnesses you had today were outstanding. I mean, Justice Dalley, Gaziano, two folks who I don't know, but very, I mean, you couldn't have got 4 better people. They told a nice story. Really impressed with you. You're going to be passionate person on the bench. You're going to listen. I think you're going to be a great addition to the district court, and I'd be more than happy to support you when your name comes before the council next week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other counselors have any questions? Counselor Duff?
Thank you. Good to see you after our talk. I do have a couple of questions, and this one isn't something we talked about, so I don't want you to think I'm trying to trick you or anything. But you're very young, and I'm not opposed to that at all. I know some councils have challenges with that. My concern is that you will be on the bench for a long time, in the burnout and the mental and spiritual that can take on you and your family. Have you had, and I'm sorry, because we didn't talk about this, but have you had a chance to discuss that with your wife and with your support system, and have you thought about it at all?
Yes, Counselor, I
mean,
certainly have thought about it, and I have spoken about it with my wife, and thankfully she'll go a long way to make sure that doesn't happen.
She's an artist, so she's better balanced than probably.
She's very balanced, yes. No, I think it's important to have interests and hobbies outside of the job, and I think that will help keep me grounded, help keep me fresh, and I certainly have a tremendous support network family. So it's something that I've thought about, and it's something that I don't want to say that I'm not concerned about, but something that I'm cognizant of, and will do my very best to make sure that I show up to do the very best I can every day.
And I believe that, you know, the things I know about you and I've learned about you, I have no reason to not believe that. But part of this concern comes from something we did speak about, and that's that public officials today, and unfortunately judges, I think are unfairly attacked by the public and by the press many times when the decisions that they make are not popular, or we don't understand. And there is, as I stated to you, a separation of powers. And I think it needs to be respected even when we don't agree with the decision. Because we're not the judge. We're not privy to some of the information judges may have in front of them. And how they come to their conclusions may not be how we would come to a conclusion. That said, it can put you under tremendous scrutiny when usually it starts in the press, which has become very vitriolic, and then the public, and they go and they protest at your home, and they protest at the court, and I think it's uncivil. I even when I disagree with people, I think there's a level of civility that we just completely have lost. I thought we were getting back to it, spiraling out of control. That concerns me for you, you know, to your psyche. And what it does to all of our judges, frankly, to everyone that works in the system. I applaud everyone that does, because the truth of the matter is, most of you, probably all of you, could be making a long dough in private practice, doing something else. And our judges, we're no longer 48th in the country in what we pay our judges, which we were just a few years back. We're still not really where we should be, I think. Because you are today called upon to be, you know, priest, rabbi, teacher, parent, social worker, doctor, nurse, lawyer. And it's a lot. And it's not what it was. And it's not a TV show, it's real life. And that is where this is where my concern really stems from, because I think it's something that you need to pay very careful attention to, and you need to know. And I'm actually quite thrilled your wife is an artist, because that says to me in Eileen land that you're probably a pretty grounded person and have a good sense of self and can be a good support, because our support is so important in this work. So that's my speech on that. What do you see as some of the bigger issues that you may face as a judge if you go through?
Systematically, I think right now we, like many parts of our society, lack resources to clinicians, treatment providers. As you know, there's many of the people who come into our courts have mental health issues, and they have substance use or alcohol use disorders. And what we've seen is that we're struggling a bit finding enough clinicians to handle the load. So I think, and that's not just unique to the court system. I was speaking with my sister-in-law, the teacher, and they're experiencing the same thing as well in their field. So I think systematically that's something that we're struggling with, and our judges and our staff are doing the best they can in that regard.
That's a great observation, and thank you for bringing that to our attention. I was at a conference recently, and The Economist that spoke, I found quite fascinating, because one of the things, the thing that stuck with me is he talked about we're in an economy we have literally never seen before, where we don't have people to fill jobs. And actually, the unemployment numbers came out today, they're lower than they've been. It's not that people aren't working, it's that they found other work. And they've made choices not to do work that they don't find sometimes monetarily rewarding, but spiritually rewarding. And they don't want to do things where they feel they've been abused. And I think we see this even in DCF. I mean, it's very easy for us as elected officials to sit in any chair in this building and attack the people who work for DCF. But when you're paying social workers $15, $18, $20 an hour, and they have unbelievable caseloads, that's what you get in a capitalist society. And there is such a thing as supply and demand. We're just not used to seeing the demand coming from the workers when we have a supply issue. It's very different than anything we've ever seen. And that's a great piece of information for us as councils to have, because community services are critical to anyone succeeding, because our job really isn't, yes, sometimes people will be incarcerated, but the job is to rehabilitate, I think. I don't know if you agree with that, but to me, the job is to get people out and paying taxes, get them out and getting them working, get them out and being productive. I don't want to, it's not just about being punitive. And yes, indeed, there are some terrible people that perhaps shouldn't see the light of day. I'm not an idiot. But most people, I think, end up in jail and sometimes prison because they've done a really stupid thing. They've made a bad choice. And so how do we help them make better choices? And some of that is by providing community services. So thank you for that observation, because I think that's important. And I will say again, because I've said it before, it is very du jour to talk about funding for beds. And I keep asking for funding, and we're asking for beds, and we're asking for that. But how hard are we asking? Because we ain't doing it, because we're not funding them. And it's real easy for us to all point the fingers at everybody else, but every single person who sits in this building, every single one of us who's elected, has a higher responsibility. We should be held to a higher standard. I absolutely believe that. We have been entrusted by the public to do a job, and we have to find ways of doing it. And we have to come up with some really different ideas, because what we're doing, as Councilor Jubenville has said many times, it ain't working. We're not going to arrest our way out of these problems. So that brings me to another question, and I hope you don't feel like I'm trying to, these aren't things we really spoke about, but I know we have sentencing guidelines, and there's always been a controversy with those, with some of the counsels who appear in court. That they're just guidelines, but judges feel tied to them and such. And if you're a new judge, of course, there's a learning period, and there's a growth chart and everything. But one of the things that I would hope to see, and I'm wondering if you would consider it, is creative sentencing, in new ideas, in thinking, you know, I hate to use the cliche outside the box, but really outside the box. Have you ever, have you considered that? Do you and your colleagues, when you're, I'm seeing this woman's face of intent, do you talk about this? Do you share ideas and different thoughts on this sort of thing, or what do you think about it? Tell me. I'm not in court. I'm not a lawyer. Tell me what you think.
Well, I think sentencing has to start with the individual case before the judge. And there can't be one size fits all when it comes to a sentencing philosophy. I do think that as judges go through the goals of sentencing, and rehabilitation being one of the big goals of sentencing, judges should consider what might be the best tools that are available to them to make sure that that person can get what they need to become rehabilitated. And if that requires thinking outside the box, so long as it's within legal parameters, then I think that that's something that a judge could consider.
What do you think of the other goals of sentencing? Because you said rehabilitation is one. What are some of the others?
Protection of the public, safety of the public, protection and safety of victims, punishment, deterrence. Those are some of the other factors that I think judges should and have to consider when they're developing a goal for a particular sentence.
I agree with much of that. And what's the difference between deterrence and punishment?
Well, they're certainly perhaps closely related, but I think that as far as the goals of sentencing, as we're taught in the case law, I think punishment is you are actually, as a judge, punishing the person for the act that they committed, whereas if you can simultaneously impose some portion of the sentence that is going to act to ensure that they don't do that again. So you're punishing them for the act that they've done and then ensuring that they don't do that.
Creating simultaneously a deterrent. I agree with that. So taking this yet a step further, because this is a subject that I find fascinating. When does punishment end? When should it end? When legally should punishment end?
Well, I think punishment ends at the time that the sentence is complete, whether that's the day that the person steps out of a jail or house of corrections, or the date that their probation is terminated.
I'm just interested. I'm not going to say yay and nay. I think to me, this is one of the biggest issues we face today. It's a huge issue in our parole system, is that our parole is very punitive and this has nothing to do with you. But it is a public safety issue because we are having exactly, I got a letter today from a prisoner saying this exact thing. I'm not even applying for parole again. I'm going to serve my sentence and I'm walking out of here because it's the only way the punishment stops. Wow, that's really, really, really scary. That is a huge public safety issue. Anyway, but it's just food for thought on that. Judge George is on the state Supreme Court. He and I have talked. He gave a wonderful speech a couple months ago. I think it may have been in Worcester. And I liked it so much that I called him up and thanked him for it and said, this was before I had some issues in my family where I couldn't get together, but I want to sit and talk to him more about it and more about and it's really sort of the recreation and creativity of how judges can think about sentencing that may be more effective than what we're doing. And I don't know what the answers are. I mean, I'm just running my mouth. But I do think, but I think it's important to have the conversations, and I'm happy because I see some of your colleagues really paying attention, including the Justice Dalley, who I have such deep admiration and respect for, because I think these are the keys to getting people back working in productive. It makes no economic sense to keep people in jail forever. I mean, there's some people maybe, like I said, there are some people that are very not good. I do believe evil exists. But a lot of people, I'm 62. Some of the things I did as a kid, I mean, you can't do that stuff today. We were just horsing around or whatever, but then times have changed, and it's quite serious, and people make mistakes. They do make mistakes. And so how do we help them? How do we punish them? How do we rehabilitate them? And how do we reintegrate them into society so we haven't actually taught them how to become a criminal? That's one of my biggest concerns. So anyway, thank you for your time and for your answers. I'm not going to go on to this because I like talking to you. You're smart. And you have a good mind, I think, that's nimble and can think quickly. I told you before, one of the most important attributes that I like in any person is if they can change my mind. If they can make me see something differently. So I hope that if you ascend to the bench, that you will keep your mind open enough so somebody may be able to change it sometime. Because that's where the growth happens. And that's where learning happens. And that's exciting. That's where criminal justice, that's the intersection of really great stuff that can happen. And that's what I'm, in my tiny little role here, that's what I strive to achieve is that type of thing. Because anyone that can get you to look at an issue differently, it's just, to me, that's what I live for. I think it's fantastic. So thank you, sir, for your time. Thank you for your application. I appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Duff. Councilor Hurley.
Last but not least,
That me?
last but not least.
You know what? I was starting that way, but they raised their hands first before I called on you.
All right, so we talked at some length a couple times, and what struck me about your application was that all of the instances that you described were Superior Court cases. And yet you're applying for the district court. And the cases that, for the most part, you were involved in was the appeals unit, with the exception of sitting first or second chair on murder cases. So my concern is, it's like saying that you're a brain surgeon, trained to be a brain surgeon, but you want me to hire you at my hospital to be OBGYN. Why do you think that you're going to be able to do the job as a district court judge when you haven't been in a district court as either a defense counsel or a prosecutor, to get to know the rhythm of a district court, to get to know the integral parts of a district court proceeding, how the different people who come into a courtroom to deal with one case interact with each other, what you should rely on, what you should not have much faith in, or how you're going to go about becoming this district court judge that's going to be great. And don't get me wrong, everybody says you're great as a person, that you're great in terms of your intellect, that you're great in terms of your work ethic. All that is great. My concern, after sitting as a judge for 20 years, is letting you loose in a courtroom, okay? After the 30-day training period, which really is 20 days because you include the weekends. And I was on the education committee, and I worked on a lot of seminars and just mentoring new judges. Any judge who was appointed in my region, I was the judge that put together their education plan. And they all came from similar backgrounds of either being defense counsel or assistant DAs who had earned their stripes practicing in the district court day after day after day. So you tell me, how, after 30 days, do you think you're going to be able to fly on your own? That's what they do. They let you go after 30 days. You have a week in a small court, medium-sized court, large court, trials. And in that time, hopefully, you get 1 day in probation violations hearings. You have had no experience in terms of 209As, all right? You've really had no experience in doing the judicial response, all of which that's fine. But what is it that you have that after 30 days is going to allow you to be a great district court judge?
Counselor, I appreciate the question. I appreciate the concern, and I think it's fair. I recognize that I don't have the same degree of experience being in a district court or the BMC on a day in, day out basis. If I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed, I would do three things. I would draw on my experience that I've had over the last 4.5 years in my role as counsel to the district court. We wear many hats in that role, but one thing that I would draw very heavily on is my discussions with judges on an almost daily basis, talking through any number of the issues that they may have in front of them. It requires that I have the respond district court procedure and practice for life. And some of that I've learned from my discussions with judges. I may suggest something and they say, well, that's not going to work, practically speaking. So I would draw from that experience in those discussions. When we have those discussions, it requires me to think through the issue from their perspective, from a judicial perspective. So I would draw on that experience. And I like to think that they trust me enough to call me with any number of questions or answers. They trust my foundation of what happens at the district court, but also my judgment as well. So I would draw on those discussions that I've had with the judges and clerks for whom I work. I would also draw on my experience as an ADA. Again, I was never assigned to a rotation in a district court or BMC for any very significant length of time. Although I was assigned to the appeals unit, I would jump at the opportunity when one of the divisions of the BMC, usually the central division, was short-staffed and they needed ADAs to fill in. So I would jump at those opportunities. I would go down and I would session alongside other ADAs who are basically training me along the way. So that I've done arraignments, I've done bail hearings, I've done pleas, I've done some sentencing arguments. Again, I don't have the same experience that someone who's a seasoned multi-year district court practitioner would have, but I've been down to the BMC enough that I feel like I have a good sense and feel for the rhythm of how things happened in that court. Not saying that there's not much to learn, because there is. I realize on a daily basis how much I don't know. And I think that's something that I would take with me to the bench. But I would draw on my experience being before judges in the BMC, as well as the Superior Court. And then thirdly, the district court is a great court. It's got amazing judges who, as I see, are amazing colleagues. And I know that courts are going to be running busy sessions and you can't jump off in every case. But I wouldn't hesitate, when necessary, to take a recess if I had something that I had just never encountered before, to call one of my more experienced colleagues to get their advice. Because I know that that's what happens when new judges get on the bench, and the veteran judges are more than happy to assist new judges as they make that transition. So I would draw on those three things. As I point out, recognize there's much to learn. I would soak up everything like a sponge. I get up to speed as quickly as possible.
How much experience have you had in dealing with defendants in criminal cases that have drug issues?
I have some experience. We had some cases when I would go down to help out in the BMC, either cases that I had or cases that I were assisting the BMC ADAs on, who did have drug dependency. I have some experience with that. I've also attended lots and lots of trainings in my time as counsel in the district court that judges go to learn about drug dependency. And I've read several articles as well.
What percentage of your entire practice what you say is you have BMC experience 10%. How long ago was that, and how much of that was related to defendants with drug problems or mental health problems?
It was probably 9 or 10 years ago at this point, so it's some time ago.
So what was the norm 9 or 10 years ago has radically changed?
Yes, I agree with that, yes.
Okay. You're 41 years old.
Yes.
I have a few years on you. Why so young? Why do this when you're 41 and not 45?
Couple of reasons. Being counsel to the district court for the last 4.5 years has put me in a unique position. Not only seeing the court from the outside, but I see what happens behind the scenes. Our courts the district courts are vital to the community, and anybody who has a matter in the district court should feel like they can come in and have their matter handled fairly, with dignity. Being behind the scenes, I see how hard our district court judges work to make that expectation a reality through the training programs and constant conversations amongst themselves and with us to make sure that they're doing the very best that they can, has really inspired me to want to do that job, which is one of the reasons that I've applied. The other is, I'd like to think that I was an asset to the DA's office, to the community when I worked there. I'd like to think that I've been an asset to the district court over the last 4.5 years as counsel. And I think those experiences, without sounding too sure of myself, will make me an asset to the court if I'm fortunate enough to be on the bench. If I'm so fortunate, I plan to be a good judge, and I plan to do that for a very long time. So I've applied now because I want to look at myself as an early investment that's going to pay long-term returns for the court and the community.
Well, the reality of being a district court judge is that you don't have enough staff. You don't have enough time to do everything you need to do. You don't have somebody to research your cases and type up your opinions. The person who does that is you, okay? I did it for 20 years. I saw 2 of my dear friends both die of ALS. Both were first justices in Chicopee and in Springfield. And that's before Billy Boyle, who was the third judge to die from ALS. And I think the job that you've had for the last 4 years is easy in comparison. Easy. And the thing that concerns me is at 41, you're looking at least 25 years before retirement, and that can be wearing on you when you're the only judge, because you're so shorthanded in the district court that they take your other judge, who was to do jury trials every month, 1 week a month, they take that person away because they don't have enough judges. And you're faced with either giving it to a bigger court where you know your cases are going to get lost in the shuffle because you're the poor stepchild, or you're stupid like me and say, don't take my jury cases away. I'll do both. I'll do the primary session and the jury session. And that went along very well until one afternoon when I said to my secretary, what are you doing for lunch? And she said, nothing, Judge. Why? I said, because I think I want to go to the hospital because I think I might be having a heart attack. All right, that's the district court. Right, Paul? Judge Dalley, right?
As you describe a lot of the challenges that we face.
Right. So I'm just saying at 40, I was 45, which is the optimal age. I found judges who got on earlier turned into cranky pants. So it's just a very difficult kind of job to do for that length of time. And so I haven't made up my mind, Zachary. I've given you more thought than I've given a lot of other nominees that have come before me. And I usually can pretty much take a look, use the knowledge and experience I have, talk to the person at length about a lot of different issues. And I'm really torn because I know you got a good heart, you got a good family, and you certainly got brain power. But I just don't want to see it get eaten up by your concern and your work ethic for it to become something that becomes burdensome. So I also have to get back for a doctor's appointment because when you retire, all you do, the only reason you retire is so you can be on time for your doctor's appointments. So I thank you for your time. You've got a lot of good qualities, and I'll be thinking about you all week long.
Thank you very much, Counselor.
I'm feeling that great and that got out of control. I should have been calling on people and I let them do it. I'm sorry.
It's okay, I'm good.
I get you out. Yeah.
Good.
Thank you, Counselor. I first want to thank you. I think we met for 4 hours, and I meet with everyone, 21 years, from parole board to judge. It's important to me because I'm not voting for someone just on that paper. I want to know the whole person that's going to be on the bench. So I thank you for all that time. And I always ask the nominees to tell me your journey. How did you get to the JNC? Tell me how many, for people who don't know, every governor chooses 21 lawyers who has a tremendous authority, responsibility to decide if a nominee is going to have an interview and who's going to be recommended to the governor. So out of the 21, how many were there?
I believe there were 10 from my interview.
Okay, and it's no reflection on you, but I want the public to know. I have been talking about this and talking. This is the first administration that hasn't had all of those lawyers there. They're giving a lifetime position and Half of them or more haven't met the person, haven't talked with them, haven't called them, haven't investigated, and they vote. So it goes nowhere, but I want the public to know, I'm hoping someone will act on this JNC. This JNC, under the Baker administration, has never had 21 lawyers at a hearing. And in the Salucci administration, the chair of the JNC sat the 21 lawyers down and said, if you don't attend the hearing, you don't vote on the nominee. That's a democracy. That's justice, okay? Because people think we have so much authority. I only vote on one person. I don't know how many applied. I don't know how many are rejected. I don't know how many got an interview. And that's our responsibility only to vote yes or no. So I want people to know that I think that we're getting shortchanged with this JNC. Okay, so having said that, it goes nowhere, but I want to say it. So congratulations on being appointed. Now, one of the things I was concerned about was your age, to be honest. But you know, I learned nothing is absolute, and there are exceptions to every rule. We had a 40-year-old. I was the only one that voted against him. You know why? His 2 positions that he had, that's all he did when he got out of law school, was one of 13 assistant solicitors in a city hall. One of 13 in an office. And then worked for a sheriff. And he's sitting in a district court. I know people out there that have lawyers 27, 28, 30 years. We had one today, I voted 30 years. She's been sole practice, excellent. But you know, the thing is that with you, it's not political. You earned it the old-fashioned way. And when I met you and when I've gone over all of your history, you have been involved in more cases and been more involved in giving advice to people who have been lawyers 25, 30 years, really. So I'm impressed by that. And I'll tell you what came through to me. First of all, I got a call from Ann Colicchio, one of the most respected clerk magistrates, and she is in the Concord District Court. She called me, and the first thing she said, he's a kind man. I heard that here. I heard that here. 3 times I heard it. So that means a lot to me. And she told me what her relationship is, and she said, everyone, and that's the word she said, everyone goes to Attorney Hillman for advice to know whether a case warrants an appeal, to ask advice, to ask about rules and chapters and all of that. And that to me is amazing to hear that. And so that's what I'm hearing from everyone, to have a Judge Gaziano to come and speak for you, and Dalley, Judge Dalley, I mean, and Judge Dickoff to take the time. It says something about you and the confidence they have. Now, we talk about the district court, and I hear it all the time, it's the people's court. Isn't that true? They always say. Okay, now tell me, how are you going to prepare to be in the district court? Is there a curve you have to learn from your appeals, SJC, Superior Court, to go to the district court with your experience?
I certainly expect there to be a learning curve. I will, to make that transition, I will certainly draw on my experiences that I've had as an attorney, appearing in front of judges from different levels and different courts throughout my career. I certainly take a lot from the experiences that I've had from judges, and I'll try to apply that. But I'll also really soak in and rely on the judges who are there already. The district court has a really, as Councilor Hurley was saying, has a really robust training program for new judges. In addition to that, you're assigned a mentor. I'd certainly lean on my mentor if I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed, as well as other judges that I've become frankly friends with through my role as counsel in the district court. So I know that there's a very strong support network there for persons making the transition from practice or being counseled into becoming a district court judge.
Well, I'd like you to give us the time to tell us your work experience in how you advise chief justices and clerks in all kind of complex legal matters. Tell us some of those things, and what do you feel was the most, how can I say it, the most rewarding that, that you've had, that you have advised and been the prosecutor, and tell us about that.
Sure. In my role as counsel to the district court, we wear a number of different hats. We do a number of different things. We not only develop policy for the court, and that would be something that would be at the direction of Chief Justice Dalley. So he may say, I'm thinking about it, a new policy for the court, or we need a new policy for the court. Can you take a look at what legal impediments or what legal what the legalities behind it might be, and then can you draft it? So that's something that I do. We also are assigned to different committees with judges and other staff from the office. In those committees, we draft jury instructions that are used by judges in jury trials, and they're all posted on mass.gov. So attorneys can go to them and pull the jury instructions as they're preparing for their case. So it really serves utility to both the parties and in the court. We create and draft a lot of the forms. So we need to know, for example, we're creating a reasons for bail form. We would need to know, okay, what are all the reasons that a judge can consider in determining whether or not they're going to set bail? And we put that into a format that it can be easily used by a judge, but also creates a record of it for if there were to be some challenge down the road. And then we also take calls on a daily basis from judges and clerks on anything from a motion to suppress that might be pending in front of a judge, and they'll give you the facts, and they'll want to talk about what the law is and how it might apply to the facts that they have before them. Obviously, we're not telling them what decision to make, but they want to talk through the issues with us. To something like someone who's being committed or seeking to be committed on a Section 35 petition, and whether the person is an authorized person who could petition for that Section 35. You asked, what is the most rewarding? It's hard for me to say what is the most rewarding because I found it all rewarding, just as I did every case that I handled in the DA's office was rewarding because every case was important to someone. So all that work has been rewarding to me. It's hard to single out just one example.
I wish that Councilor Hurley could hear this because I'm going to ask you. One of the things that you have done in your work experience is developed and implemented district court policy and educational programs for justices and for clerks. So tell us about that.
Absolutely. Chief Justice Dalley has, he's designed, and along with the District Court Education Committee, has designed a really robust continuing education program for district court judges. This consists of one annual 3-day conference in which judges go, and it's just, it's all continuing legal education. It could be on something that is a newly emerging topic, or it could be something that may seem to be something that happens every day, and it's just a refresher on the topic. In addition to that, the district court does 3 regional education programs a year. So there's 4 educational programs a year at minimum. The District Court Education Committee that consists of a number of judges and some clerks and some of the staff member from the administrative office will take feedback from judges who might say, we'd really like an education program on this topic, or we'd like some guidance on that topic. And the Education Committee will take that and work up an educational program and educational resources. This typically consists of presentations, sometimes by judges, sometimes by attorneys, the district court staff attorneys, sometimes outside people, professionals in their field are brought in to talk to the bench. A couple of years ago, the Education Committee brought in Dr. Ruth Potee to talk about substance use disorder and the impact that it has on individuals' brains. So the Education Committee will draft up all of those programs, and then it's presented to the judges at one of these regional conferences. In addition to that, the legal staff, myself and my colleagues, Bethany Stevens and Kristen Stone, we monitor every decision that comes out of the SJC or the appeals court. If it's something that is going to have an impact on district court practice, we send out a bulletin to all the judges so that they're aware of this case that came down and they can be aware of it if it comes up in practice.
What I liked in your work experiences, and I don't see that, I've been here 21 years, that you have been on trial court commissions and boards for criminal and civil, race and ethnic fairness committees. And this is something judges didn't have to deal with, 30, 40 years ago. And I think that, that's an asset for you to be on the bench. So you've had over 140 briefs, right? And 90 cases. And let me ask you, is there one that comes through that'll always be in your mind that was the most rewarding outcome?
I certainly, every case was rewarding to me because I treated every case as the most important case in the world because it was for someone. So in that sense, every case that I worked on, including in particular ones with victims, were rewarding. In my application, I talked about one of the cases that I second sat, which was the Commonwealth versus Alimony case. That case stemmed from the defendant over a 20-hour period randomly attacking unprovoked 3 women in South Boston, like I said, over the span of 20 hours, seriously injuring 2 of them and killing another. That was a case that required an incredible amount of work, and I took a lot away from that case. I took away how important preparation and preparedness is. I took away, from a judicial perspective, what's required to make a case fair for all parties, and so that everybody has a fair trial. It's something that I'll always take away from that case. And then the most important was just the dignity and grace that we experience with and strength from the survivors and the families of the victims.
And something that I don't see in a resume too, that you've gone out to the neighborhoods, you've gone out to the residents and you've met with them. Tell me about the Somali community, because I admit my ignorance of that. So tell me how you were involved in that.
Sure, we were invited, Kara Hayes, who was in charge of community outreach at the DA's office, and I believe she's still there at Suffolk County. She's just a wonderful asset to the community. She was approached by members of the Somali community to come out and have dinner with them. And so we went out on a couple of different occasions. We met with them and we listened to them and listened to concerns that they had about prosecution in their neighborhood. And they listened to us regarding the perspective of the district attorney's office. So it was really, it was a very good experience, and I think it was a very good experience for the community as a whole.
One of the cases that you had, I was impressed with, that you found an error that the Commonwealth made in that trial. Tell us about that one.
Sure. That was the Adam Casino case. That was a first-degree murder appeal that I was assigned. And as I was going through the record, I noticed that a piece of evidence, a piece of corresponding evidence that was required to be admitted had unintentionally been not admitted to make sense of the DNA evidence. And so I brought the error to the attention of the trial prosecutor and to my supervisor. And everybody immediately said, well, this is something that we need to bring to the attention of the court. So in our brief, we brought it to the attention of the court in our brief. And we addressed the issue in front of the SJC at oral argument.
Is there one case that comes to mind that was the most upsetting to you, the outcome, that it was not the way that you had hoped, and that'll always be in your mind?
There was one of the last cases that I did as far as a trial goes. I was a second seat in a case that was charged as a first-degree murder. It was a really brutal and awful crime. And it was it was a difficult trial. It was a lengthy trial. I think it took 4 or 5 weeks. And ultimately, the jury came back with a manslaughter verdict. And we certainly, we respected the jury's verdict. I mean, you always do. It's always going to stick with me because you have to have difficult conversations with the families of the victims afterwards. And, you in a sense, you feel like you let them down, and that's a difficult thing to go through. But they, as always, the victims' families, they show you grace and they show you strength.
I found your work experience really unique from what I usually see. You have been involved in everything: trial preparation, prepping witnesses, researching legal issues, drafting and arguing motions, and drafting and arguing jury instructions. So having done all that, you had a case that was first-degree murder. Let me see what that was. That was let me see, Commonwealth versus Edwin Nominee?
Yes. That was the one I had spoke about just a couple.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay.
That's a
Yeah. Okay. So there was something else that came to mind, another first-degree murder, and on-call prosecutor. What does that mean?
The on-call prosecutor is Suffolk County has responsibility for all unattended deaths by statute. And so there always has to be someone present. During work hours, that typically would be an ADA assigned to the homicide unit. But between the hours of 4:30 and 8:30, there was a prosecutor who would essentially get a beeper. And if there was a call from Boston Police, and you'd have to go out to the scene, and you'd work with the detectives to be able to relay the information to the chief of homicide. You might consult with the detectives about whether or not to apply for a warrant and what would need to be in the warrant to be able to establish probable cause, and provide any sort of legal advice as they begin to process through and work through that investigation.
It's been said here by your witnesses about your work ethic. And I saw that in one of your cases that you are still following up after you have left, the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office. Do you know the one I'm talking about? That was the one that you're assigned to coordinate and conduct an investigation into the defendant's claims of innocence?
Yes, so I was assigned along with another prosecutor at the outset to review claims of innocence. It was an investigation that spanned a couple of years. And during that time, we filed a motion in the Superior Court, or they filed a motion and we filed a response, but we continued to investigate the claims. Ultimately, when I left the office, I handed over that case, obviously, to the office because I couldn't take it with me. But I've continued to follow the case as it's made its way through. And ultimately, I understand that the Superior Court granted the defendants a new trial in that case.
Now, I'm sure the cases have involved drugs and alcoholism and so forth. How would you, as a judge, how would you assist these people that come before you that are drug addicted or alcohol addicted or whatever? I mean, I've been talking about it and it goes nowhere, that we don't have enough drug treatment centers. I think we have 3. I think we have 1 for women in Framingham. And the men don't want to go to a prison for treatment. And I've said it, I've had 2 close friends that lost their sons to overdose and heroin. And you know, they have these programs, weekends or whatever. It's not enough. So what can you do with, you know, to help? They're not providing the budget here. And if you don't have the budget, you can't open these treatment centers. So that's a big problem. And I was just hoping that there would be a lobby of judges to change this budget here. I don't know what it is now, but it used to be like 1.5% to the judicial. So what is your experience and what would you like to do?
Well, my experience from a judicial perspective stems mostly from my last 4 years working as counsel to the district court. The district court does have jurisdiction over so-called 35 proceedings, which are involuntary commitments of individuals who may be suffering from substance use disorder, alcohol use disorder. I've certainly learned a lot about that process in my role as the court, and I would view each matter that comes before me, because the court gets a lot of these petitions individually to determine whether or not the standard is met to have that person committed for their substance use or alcohol use disorder. On the criminal side of things, if a person is going to be sentenced to, say, a term of probation, we talked about one of the goals of sentencing being rehabilitation, and utilize the probation service. They're very good at finding treatment for individuals who may be suffering from substance use or alcohol use disorder. So that's certainly something that I would consider from the criminal side.
How do you feel about the guidelines? Do you think that's something that you support, or, you know, it seems like I haven't heard anyone that supports it.
I'm a big proponent of judicial discretion when it comes to sentencing. I think every case has to be decided on its own merits, on its own circumstances. And so I'm a very big proponent of judicial discretion.
And what's your opinion on minimum, maximum sentencing?
Again, I'm a big proponent of judicial discretion. I understand that's the legislature's prerogative, and I certainly respect that. If as a judge, you have to follow the law. But I'm a big proponent of judicial discretion when it comes to sentencing.
It does take discretion away from the judge, doesn't it?
The judge would have to follow the law.
So you even have gone out to middle school how many weeks, over 20 weeks or something you've been going out there? I think that's wonderful because adults don't even know about the court. And when someone goes into the court, naturally they're nervous and they're afraid, you know? So tell me about that program. How it has been successful?
Yeah, and thank you for asking about that. That was a Discovering Justice program that was a part of a couple of years ago. I've been a part of it a couple of times. In fact, Attorney Saxon here did one with me. It was a great experience. We went out to the school itself, and we taught an after-school program to the kids about the legal system, and we did that through a make-believe case. They became the lawyers, and they became the judges. And so they learned not only about the law, but they got to experience it by getting up at the end of the 10 weeks or however many weeks it was in front of a judge, and they got to make their cases to the judge. So they had it was a great experience for me. It was one of the things that I looked forward to most every week. And it was a great experience, I think, for the kids because they got a sense of not only what it's like to be a lawyer, but what the law can do and how it can be impactful to someone's life.
And, you know, we don't see this and with all your background and you've had writings. And I didn't ask you when we met for 4 hours, but I would like to know, tell me about that writing that you did about the prohibition on misleading a police officer. Tell us about that.
Yes, that came down, that was in response to a decision that the SJC had made regarding misleading a police officer statute. And it seemed until they came out with that decision that there might be a gap in the law. And so after they issued that decision, I was fortunate enough to be able to write a comment about it in the Mass Law Review, highlighting that now that the SJC has spoken on this one particular issue, it's unclear whether there is any common law piece of this that would make interfering with a police officer a common law crime. Subsequent to that, the court did issue a decision in recognizing that there is a common law crime of obstructing a police officer. I think actually Justice Gaziano wrote the opinion.
As someone who is technologically impaired, and I don't say that frivolously, I am, and I admit it, I'm very interested in pleading guilty in video teleconference. Is the defendant constitutionally present when pleading guilty by video teleconference?
That was a piece that I wrote back when I was in law school, but it's interesting because it came up over the last 2 years during the pandemic when we were struggling to figure out how many court proceedings we could conduct constitutionally by video conference. Ultimately, the office gave advice to the judges that if anybody's going to be tendering a plea by video conference, they should be doing so with a waiver of the right to be in person. And so we developed a colloquy that judges could follow when they would be conducting a video conference plea or tender in those circumstances.
You know, this pandemic, what it's done to everything. I've had friends that have florists that are out of work, have lost their business, and a friend that has a bakery for 30 years and out of business. But I think of the courts, and I think, how do we continue with the courts during the pandemic? Now, I think of the 209As. How did you deal with that in the courts?
In the early days of the pandemic, we identified certain emergency matters that had to be heard. And of course, 209As and 258Es were part of those. There's a domestic violence committee in the district court, and they worked really hard to develop specific forms that could be used remotely, both seeking 209As, as well as for judges to be able to review and issue orders so that they didn't have to be in person given the pandemic. They responded really quickly. I can't take any credit for that. That was all my colleagues. But they responded really quickly so that the rights of people who were seeking 209As were protected.
Well, as an outsider, I was concerned because I thought, how do you do that on Zoom? I mean, how do you see the body language of that person? How can you really know if that person is being truthful when they're accusing someone? How does that work out?
Well, right now, people are coming back into court for their hearings. Having conducted a 209A, because I'm not a judge over Zoom, I can't speak to how difficult it was to assess credibility, but I can imagine it was difficult to assess credibility because you are right, you miss some of the cues that you would otherwise get in person.
So, so if you go to the district, you're going to be a judge in the district court. What changes would you like to see? What do you think has to be improved? Tell us about your experience.
One thing that I think the pandemic taught us is that we have to be more technologically agile. And we were able to pivot pretty quickly to get up and running from a technological sense that we're able to use Zoom hearings and be able to do hearings by telephone. But technologically, we're still somewhat behind it. I think there's room for improvement there. I think that the trial court is working very hard close the gap between we're in the private sector, and I think they're doing a very good job at that. But if the pandemic has shown us anything, it's that we can utilize technology in the courtroom for some matters, and I think we should continue to pursue that.
Okay, so you've been general counsel to the district court. So tell us the different training that you have given to judges in about court rules and so forth. Can you go through those and tell us what you have developed and presented in those trainings?
Sure, I've done trainings on expungement, the new expungement rules. We've done trainings on overviews on the 2018 crime reform bill. I think most recently, I did a training on just what we were talking about, how to use video conferencing for certain court events. Done training on motions for new trials. I'm sure I'm missing a couple, but those are the ones that immediately come to mind.
So, so what do you think could be improved in the district court? What changes do you think that should be implemented? Do you see anything, or do you think it's working very well the way it is?
I think the court's working very well the way it is. Of course, there's always room for improvement. I think like a number of other fields are seeing and experiencing just that there's not enough people applying for jobs in the health treatment and substance use treatment. Seems to be a statewide issue that spans all fields. There's just not enough people to fill those jobs that are open. But I also think that we're doing a very good job to improve our IT, which I had said is something that.
Have you been involved in any of the specialty courts?
Yes, I have. In the sense that I've attended a number of trainings. I've helped with some of the policies that involve the drug courts. I've been involved with the training manual, and our judge who oversees the specialty courts. I work with her very closely, and I've been to a number of the sessions. Yes, I have.
Well, I've been very impressed with the drug courts, and I have seen graduations there. I sit in the back and tears come to my eyes to hear these people all ages who've gone through the program and graduated, and talk about the years that they were drinking, or the years that they're on drugs, and what it did for them. So I think it's time, you know, we're not winning the war on drugs, that's for sure. From before you were born, it started, I think, the war on drugs. But anyway, here I am by myself. I just want to tell you that at first glance, I looked at your age and I said, oh no. And I mean that from my head and my heart, and that's how I vote. You have more experience than people who have been lawyers for 20, 30 years, really. And I am impressed because you have covered and when I talked to Ian Coligio, and she told me everyone goes to Attorney Hillman. She says, he's the one that we depend on to trust, to give us the information and how to proceed. If someone needs an appeal, to give us the advice in the proper legal way to go. So I don't have a poker face. I am so pleased. I really am. And it was a pleasure meeting with you. Thank you for all the time that you took. And you are on the Hall of Fame for the Belgian waffle. So with Justice Gantz and Justice Island and Justice Hines and so many, and I thank you for taking the time to come out really seriously, because it is important, because I want to know the whole person. And I thank you all for coming, and I will be next Wednesday at our public assembly. The Lieutenant Governor will sit here, she'll preside as the chair, and she will call on me, and I will make the motion to appoint you to be a judge in the district court. And I'll be very pleased to do that. And so I am going to adjourn. Thank you all for coming.